cloud. It's a good thing. Tony, we're going to jump straight to the exercises. It was all definitions. 2 new students today. Ryan is joining in to listen, and Ben I met. Both of them are listening along. They type every now and then, but that's where we're at. We're getting to the problem of doing shadow boxing exercises, and I was just answering a question on bullying. So then, for my example, that's fine, bro. Thanks for listening, Ryan. If you have video enabled, you could try turning my video off. That might help you. But if you've got other things to do as well, that's fine. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to seeing you again sometime. So we've got the my preferred solution to bullies is to show them that I am not a bully and they are not my bitch by choice. And that is how I would like to keep it. So that's my approach to bullies. If you think that
Coming.
a bitch because I'm being kind, and Tony, I'm going to mute you there. There you go. Like they think they're going to be the dominant one in that relationship, that abusive relationship. And my goal is to show them very quickly that we can have that relationship and the roles will be reversed and you won't have a choice about it if you decide to press this action. But that's a very difficult thing to pull off unless you understand fear the way that I had to, which is shadow boxing. Shadow boxing is learning weakness. It is learning how to remove weakness from yourself and learning how to see weakness in others. It's the same skill. Very much like being a doctor. You could learn to be a doctor to cripple people and hurt them if you were so inclined, or you could learn to be a doctor to help. And the same metaphor is true, by the way. So in the realm of shadow boxing, it is possible to use shadow boxing to heal somebody. And they've done it because they need to feel like they've won. The victory doesn't feel real until there's a struggle. And even if that struggle is imaginary, and that's what a shadow boxing experience can feel like. Especially if I'm not being entirely forthcoming and I'm playing a devil's advocate that is fine-tuned in a very specific direction of where I think their shadow lives. It's still up to them if they want to go and have that fight. But if they do, I try to be what they're looking for. And if I can, sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't do anything, but it helps more often than it doesn't because all it is awareness of personal limitation. So now, without further ado, I'm going to get into the exercise and list the measurement and what I learned from it and why I felt it was relevant and how you can see how to spot it in another person, which, by the way, is also how to see it in yourself. So pay attention to that and ask at the end, do I do that? And it might be yes or no, I don't know. For me, every one of these things is a list of something I didn't fully understand until I wrote it down. So I was living life without this concept. And specifically, a full, balanced understanding of this concept. So the name of my meditation notes is the Omnibus Valedictorious of Therapy with Soul Surgery. And that title was specifically chosen. The omnibus is the full collection of, which means this is the sum total of my useful blank. Valedictorious of Therapy. That's a thing I made up. I wanted my own word. It is the ultimate, penultimate victory over therapy. And finally, with soul surgery. That's what I call these measurements. That's what I call shadow work. I call it soul surgery. It can also be soul cutting. It can also be soul damaging. But surgery is like that. If something is broken and you don't work small enough to repair it, you will do more harm than good trying. You need to understand the discipline of tiny things, specifically how to repair tiny things without causing damage to larger ones for this to be possible, but it's possible for anyone to learn it with time. So begin The first breaking, understanding how wanting things truly matters and how they do not. So that seems, the object of that sentence sounds like things, wanting things. No, that is not what I learned. Understand how wanting things truly matters and how it does not. I was measuring the utility of wanting something. Meaning, I was learning that the things I wanted were not helping me. And the things I acted like I wanted were holding me back. When the things that I said I wanted were not getting done. That was my shadow box. And then this writing is when I figured out how not to do that to myself. So that was my first round of shadow boxing that day. A normal day for meditation is 7 to 10 rounds of shadow boxing. If I don't have to work that day and I've decided to take a spirit walk, which is code for eat some fucking gummies and feel good for 10 hours, which is a thing I do responsibly, never near power tools. And it's legal where I am. And then I'm a grown man, damn it, suffered a lot. Pick your rationalization. I've got all of them. I might go as many as 15 or 20 rounds with these things. And this is how I make myself stronger. So just to get a sense of scope, if any of these feel like a gut punch, well, that means I hit a spot that you hadn't found either, because that's how I feel when I figure some of these out. The second breaking, learning how much you respond when it comes to the proper and improper ways to say you are not okay. That was a twofold punch for me. Number one, I would not tell people I was not okay in healthy ways. I would keep everything locked up and wouldn't share anything. I was fine, and I was functionally, but I wasn't feeling okay, and I would lie about it. That was number one. But also the proper and improper ways to say that you're not okay. Another improper way to say I wasn't okay was when somebody could clearly see I wasn't okay and they told me I wasn't okay. They were being honest. And I would attack them for it with words. And the strength of that attack could vary depending on, it wouldn't be this aggressive thing, but I would push back, meaning I would fight an attempt to help me, which was honest and sincere. And I would lie about being in pain to someone who was honest and sincere about helping me. Because I was disgusted with myself for appearing weak or acknowledging that I had weakness inside me. Looking vulnerable, experiencing that vulnerability. That was a big one for me. I felt that shit when I had that one. That one took the wind out of me because I realized I was an asshole a lot to people who did not deserve it. And that was why I wasn't okay and I couldn't share it right. Tony?
Is it necessary, or I should say, in the same way that I tell people to guard their minds and hearts, I don't believe all help is helpful.
Define help. What direction is it coming from and where is it headed towards?
I think that being okay is a subjective term.
Yes, you decide.
And I have a small disgust for the question itself, much less someone actually saying or judging such a thing. So
is the disgust a reaction that you analyze, or is it a conclusion that you've made? Do you feel the disgust before you rationalize?
I'm trying to look from your perspective at things, and
I know these are the things I would ask along the way. So if you're looking at it from my perspective, that's a question you need to know then.
Oh, say your question again, then it'll be easy.
Okay, meaning,
I'll think like me more.
Does the disgust precede the words, or does it come after you've analyzed them? Meaning, do you have the feeling first and then the reaction, or do you have the reaction and then the feeling? Is the discuss faster or slower than the words?
I'm not sure, but it's kind of like better safe than sorry. Makes me think somebody doesn't want to be more dangerous and it lets me exploit them.
Yeah.
In the same way, somebody saying how you are without you saying how you are
Yes. Oh, so
is
that's a
something I
good, that's a
consider
good thing. I
rude.
didn't spell that out. I think I see where the disconnect is, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I think I see the pattern.
Well. It's a lot of things, but remember, my point was, or my thinking was, all just because somebody has the intention, desire, and sincerity to help doesn't mean that they should, or
Sure.
that they will be helpful to you, or that you should be kind in even accepting it, or being kind in saying you don't want it if
So
it's a persistent thing.
I can accept that if we are using the definition of help as the attempt of help and not a more specific classification after it's done as a failed attempt to help. Meaning sometimes if you can't succeed at helping, you have not helped regardless of your intent.
Sure.
Okay, good. So we're on the same page. So when I talk about these measurements specifically, these were subjective measurements. And 100% of the directions were pointing inward. So that is the reference and direction. These are all singularities of statement, where everything is defined by internal subjective memory. So there's no outside grab. So if someone else were to read this and say, they would have to decide every definition for every one of those words, and that's how the statement is intended to be read. Some of these will be useless to many people, but all of them were useful to me, and some of them are useful to some. So yes, does that cover everything that you were thinking?
Yep, that cuts down some of the subjectivity.
Awesome. Yes, these are purely subjective. They are my meditation notes, my useful measurements. Individual perspective may vary. This is a custom built tool that uses everything that is Tom to peak efficiency. If you're not Tom, you will not use these notes at peak efficiency because they weren't built for you unless you learn to become me, which if you can, I want to go into business with you.
That's the plan.
All right, so the next one here. Learning how violence can feel good, especially if having it committed on you has taught you anything at all. Most of the time, those with nothing at all claim this is the one thing they ever truly have. So that was my measurement. Then that's a tough one there. Learning how violence can feel good, especially if having it committed on you has taught you anything at all. Most of the time, those with nothing all claim that the one thing they ever have. So this was me acknowledging that I had a bias in my assumptions. I found a bias in my emotional measurements. And that bias was I was increasing the level of hostile intent behind corrective, well-intentioned things. So I was experiencing violence from my perspective mentally, but I was not receiving violence. Now, I would still endure this because that is what I do. I think, I endure, I observe because it's all pretended make-believe. But the physical effects of experiencing that state of mind are also very real, especially when it's prolonged. So this was a bad calibration that had my entire anxiety spectrum shifted up almost an entire rung. So by figuring this out, learning how violence can feel good, I was satirizing the word violence by saying all of those things that you were classifying as violence was wrong. And the only reason you said that it was violence is because that's the only measuring stick you ever had. That's the other half of that statement. So looks like I've lost Ben. That's fine. Ben, thanks for joining us. Catch you on the flip side.
Maybe they were just holding my place.
Yeah. No, Ben was here strong. He was the first one here. And I kind of invited him last minute too. 1 minute, no notice, no explanation. He came, so good for him.
If you think they're a good fit, feel free to add them to the bomb.
All right. Let's see how much time I've got left. I got half an hour left. Learn to understand that being attacked makes you stronger. When you're strong enough to properly attack yourself, you'll know the exact proper use of when violence is brief and productive to put batters back into peace and calm by being the strongest person at the game of who can chill the fuck out. So that was me accepting more the positive aspects of violence. And I don't mean the positive aspects of violence when a more suitable alternative that is peaceful has been found. That is not a positive aspect of violence. That is a reduction of utility over some of the more nonviolent actions. So nonviolence is always better. However, sometimes nonviolence is not the answer because no form of nonviolence gets the job done. And so then you have to decide, is nonviolence more important or is getting the job done more important? And sometimes nonviolence is more important. So you let shit slide. But on very important things where people could die, maybe you don't let that shit fly and you do use violence. And this means the proper use of violence, from my perspective, is not never. It is when a brief and extreme display of violence will produce a non-permanent result that will show you are only this calm person by choice, and you can go from 0 to psychotic. And it is literally your grace that keeps your temperament in check because you have decided to use your monstrosity for good, but you have not decided to lock it away and will fully use it against anyone who gets in your way if you are trying to do good. And it's abundantly clear that that's what's going on. So that was the meaning behind that. This is my shadow boxing. And so now I'm already up to, that was 3 rounds and I'm already starting to feel it, even going over it again. This stuff is psychologically heavy. The 4th breaking, learning that people that like.
Can we stay on violence?
Say what?
Can we stay on violence a little bit?
Well, I mean, I'm done with that one. If you had a question, I'm just reading these in order that I had them. So there's a temporal chronological map. So the order of them actually matters as we get later on, because then you can have references in time for comparative growth. So if you have a question about violence, we can tie that to the last one, but I don't have a new one about it just yet.
It wasn't really a question, just melting, I guess. It's not even a yes and. I just wanted to mention and regurgitate, I suppose.
Okay, go mention away.
So you said, you mentioned a lot about nonviolence, and you said, every time I hear nonviolent, I think about Dr. King, and I named my son Dr. King, and
Always
I used to be,
always the goal.
I used to be nonviolent, but then I had kids and argue with my wife about hitting them.
Yeah.
And also I've been in other life situations now. Actually, I consciously wanted to be nonviolent. Don't know why, but I decided I wanted to be nonviolent. And so I hung out with my drug dealer every day. And after about 6 months or whatnot, I was like, hey, we did it. I could kill somebody now. Like, yeah, I could do that.
Fled off that behavior, like that perspective, as it were.
Well, I mean, something that's special with, well, actually, I know it's special for me and I assume it's special for you. I think split-second decisions or in the moment decisions aren't hard. Like, I think, I tell everybody I live in the future or the past.
Oh, see, that's very, they're not hard, but to me, they're very serious.
Yeah,
that
but
makes a difference to me.
Yeah, no.
For me, the split-second decision is a very serious moment for me. And that's not a choice, that's a reaction. And I can tell you where it comes from. It's just high anxiety, meaning I am a creature of planning out to the nth dimension with 12 degrees of certainty and 10 backup plans that all turn out well for me no matter what happens. But that's when I have 5 minutes. So that is my preferred level of certainty to navigate the world. And when that is removed from me, then it depends how heavily have I trained for this exact moment, because many split-second decisions for me are not split-second decisions. They are accessing a previous training exercise. But when I get stuck in a legitimate split-second decision where I have no idea what's going on, I struggle heavily with that. My wife is the one who's in charge of those. because she's naturally very good at them. She knows right away. She doesn't always know how, which is what I pick up on. So I look to her in that moment and say, what? And she tells me something, and I say, boom, then everything unlocks. She gives me the relevance, and I take that and do what I do, and then it's a thing I've prepared for. But for me, the split-second decision, no, that's the scariest moment of all, because causality isn't optional.
Makes sense. And we
But-
dug a little bit more into violence that I
But
like.
why? But tell me now the opposite perspective that you live in, because you said they're easy. What makes them easy? How do you do it? Why are
I
you
don't
going
think
to
it's
tell me
opposite.
that
I think
there's a
that's the
cure
same.
for this personal hell and withhold it from me? Give
Oh,
me
of
the
course there
secret to
is.
relaxing in the split-second moment, Tony. Tell me how you do it.
Confidence.
In what?
Confidence in all of your systems and whatnot, or indifference towards them.
Systems. Systems.
By living in the past or future.
Okay.
So the scenario is,
Living in the moment.
yeah, the scenario is somebody has a gun to your head and say, do you follow Christ? I think it's really easy to say yes or no then, and that isn't difficult. I think it's a lot harder to live for Christ and continuously to make that decision day and day again. So in the moment, knowing that if I don't have 10 ways to fix it yet, knowing that I will have 10 ways every minute for the rest of my life, makes the split-second decision.
I see. So you can't finish it, but you're able to finish it far enough to move on and finish it as you go.
And pull that energy straight from the future.
Which is why I can't do it, because I started at the finish line.
Or the past. You do it from your systems. And I think, oh, by the way, I think we're similar. Everything you said sounds like it could match perfectly.
Well, the chronology is reversed for me. That's why. You know your first step. I don't know.
No, you talked about your systems already though, and how most of what you talked about how most of what you're given, you've already thought about or have thought about before, things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's 99% of the interactions with my wife. Like I've already got all the answers. Then I've already thought about everything.
You've done the work.
Yeah. So I think we are similar. So when you then say, give me the cure, I'm like, well, anxiety looks like excitement under the MRI.
It looks like a what? Excitement.
Looks like excitement.
Yeah, you just changed the direction. Probably change the rotation.
Yeah. So
or the expectation.
Since you're asking me for a cure.
Excitement is anxiety you choose.
Yeah, well, the best part is going up on the roller coaster. The best part is before I get on stage. Because once I get on stage, once I start playing, once the roller coaster starts going, then I can just put my hands up. Like
I understand. We were analyzing this from two different angles. You were analyzing it from growth, which is good because that's what I need. I was analyzing it from chronological order, which pointed out some very interesting inconsistencies with our methods, meaning I can't use your method because you start at the air quotes start line and work to your goal. I start at my goal and work it all the way back to the first step. And if that goal is too far away, meaning it's a split second, it's too far for me to calculate, I have no idea where to go. And that anxiety makes it worse for me to focus the chain back. So my first step is hard, which is why my wife is always right, because my wife never makes the first step wrong. Everything after that, when she's trying to analyze and convince herself that she was right, she fucks it up because she fights herself on it. But she is never wrong in her split-second reaction about what is relevant. And as long as I listen to her, then I don't need my first step because she gave it to me.
I've got a random tangent question that your brain might connect, but I don't think most people's will. Tangent. Standardized tests.
Okay.
Do you double check your answers? And have you double checked your answers? And do you know the difference in those two things? For me, in the 5th grade, I got, I think, 3 wrong on the math part of the standardized testing. Next year, I did not double check my answers and I got none wrong.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So when it comes to double checking, in the sense of do I second guess? No. Do I double check? Meaning, do I go back and read the questions again? No. Do I double check? Yes. I always make sure I filled in the ovals right, because sometimes that was a problem for me. So I didn't want to get defeated on a technicality. But as far as knowing the answer, it was easy. I knew it or I didn't. And if I didn't, I knew how to guess, and I knew the odds. So everything was, I did very well on standardized tests because they follow the rules. You can
And it was a random question. It was a
Um,
random question because it doesn't really relate to anything that we've been talking about specifically, but it talks towards our thought processes and how we
I
work
don't mind the little
and how we
spice,
see ourselves.
the little spice of that. All right, next one.
So next breaking, we're good now. We talked about violence a little bit, melted
Fourth
a little
one.
bit.
Yeah, you were being my corner man there, giving me the little in between round breather there. The fourth breaking, learning that liking people can turn out well, even if you have no idea it will happen in return. Specifically, I reduced the number of tests that I give other people for whether I decide that I want to like them. Like another way of saying that is I looked at my process for liking a person and realized my standards were impossibly high. And learning that one was actually a good shadowboxing experience, because I learned I was doing that to myself as well. Like I had irrationally high expectations about what made it okay to like a thing. And by seeing myself do that to other people, I was able to find out I was doing that to myself. Because that's a reflective exercise that I've covered in a different lecture. Next one, the fifth breakings. Learning how important it is to understand the positive aspects of absolute fear. This one was me recognizing that as much as I knew about fear, most of what I knew about fear was how to avoid it. And that's a good thing. Because I'm an expert at avoiding fear is also the same thing as going to different fears, which are less scary and hiding out there. So as much utility as you get from understanding fear and being able to use it as a defense mechanism, you're still not confronting core aspects of it. And absolute fear is the only state that is capable of producing that change. You can't cheat. You have to do it eventually. And I have a very weak stomach when it comes to doing that in large amounts. I can fly around it all day. I can take pictures. I can analyze it. I can dissect it and discuss it and map it. But actually going in there and feeling it for myself, that's hard. Which is why people run from that experience all the time, which is why it gives someone the advantage when the shadow boxing they do is a fear they know how to avoid, which is brought to a person who does not know how to avoid it. You bring that to them without their control, and you literally drop a monster in front of them and see if they're strong enough to defeat it. If you were a Dungeons and Dragons monster, you would be a necromancer. You're literally raising the dead in front of them and seeing if they get caught. And if they get bit, do they turn? Which is when the shadow takes over, which is why zombie movies are subconsciously so appealing. I bite you, you have to bite me back, no choice, round, stuck in a cycle, now you're dead. Yeah, that's every zombie movie ever made, is the dichotomy of man. Thank you. I'm sorry to take the joy out of that if there was any left. I don't know that any zombie movies have been interesting since The Walking Dead, and even that one's getting pretty old. But next one, learn that whatever you think others aren't providing you, which is simple, is a thing they think you aren't providing to them in exactly the same way. This was me being frustrated at people for not doing simple things, and then realizing at the same time they were asking me for simple things from their perspective that I couldn't do, which made me ignore that I should probably try harder to do the thing if they're simple. And instead of saying I shouldn't have to do it, I should ask them how I could do it. And that was what gave me that growth. I wasn't using the help that was provided when it came to understanding new things. I only wanted to understand new things my way. And that was me being limited by that. And so removing that. restriction. This was a little follow-up. The only way to know for sure is to test it by giving it a chance and seeing if it breaks. Building bridges with pieces is far too slow. So that means if my goal was connection, best way to test the connection is just to ask if there's a connection. And if it breaks, well, there wasn't. And then you try again. So you test it, and if it breaks, you try again. Instead of building a whole bridge, one brick at a time, you just have to trust the other person to catch it if you throw them the rope enough times. So it was a disgust sensitivity I was experiencing for the conversation not going too slow. I wanted it to go my way faster, and this felt like a detour, when my way was to build a bridge timber by timber, when this person was really throwing me a rope, and I was just too stubborn to say, no, put your damn timber in line with mine. We can get this done in a week if we both work at it. That was the scolding that I gave myself. Cut that shit out because it was getting in the way. The seventh breaking. Sometimes people need to see you succeed alone before they will trust you won't bring the both of you down. Earned by giving without recompense. And yeah, that was me feeling like people owed me trust. They owed me cooperation. They owed me anything. I was unproven to them, and they didn't know if I was a good bet, and I wasn't willing to put up before I shut up. I talked the game, but I couldn't back it up. That wasn't all the time, but I had a very specific attitude that I was confronting, and that was, I felt like I couldn't ask my friends for things that good friends would have an easy time doing. And the things were like beyond simple, like the person I asked for, I made a commitment to do a thing, and it was a thing that I went out of my way to do, and it was fun, and I wanted to do it. And the person who invited me to do this and wanted me to do this, and it was good for them that I did this, said, "Is there anything I can do?" And I said, "Just bring me a shot of booze. That's it. One of them little bottles. I'll do all the rest." And I did all the rest. And I didn't get my shot of booze. And I said it was the only thing that I cared about. Or I want to do this thing, and let's talk about it and watch it together. Or let's go do this project or whatever. And it's like, nah. And so I was feeling like particularly rejected when my default setting was, how can I help you do your thing? Great. Hey, I have help I need with the thing. Oh, well, you look at the time. So I was a little resentful of the lack of reciprocity, and realized that it was a bad way to measure the system. If the system wasn't behaving how I wanted it to be, cursing the system was no good. Learning how to build a different system where the effects that reach me are the effects that I wanted meant I had to learn how to put into the system before I wanted to take out. And that meant building good karma, as it were. Just being the guy that doesn't keep score. Because guess what? When you don't keep score and everyone else does, they're not going to disagree with you when you let them think they're ahead. Every now and then, they're going to have to do something to make sure that doesn't get too impossible to ignore, and they'll be waiting for it. That's the subconscious attraction to it. The on the surface reaction is that guy is nice, and I want to be nice to him. Take your pick. It's all in there. But that's what I was going through with that. The eighth breaking. Learning to see how the innocent around you who trust you suffer because you are a tyrant. I cried when I wrote that one. I felt that shit 4 different ways, because I had 4 very important relationships to me that were all with people that I loved, and every one of them had that same suffrage until I figured out how to turn it off. Ooh, I feel that one. Yeah. there's a little crying tyrant in everybody. And looking at the tyrant, it's easy to see the endearing quality, especially when that common denominator is you. So you can't look there if you want to see what's going on. You have to look to the reactions of the people who trust you and are innocent. And you have to remember when they suffered and told you so. Because if you kept going, you're a tyrant. Unless you both had words which led both of you to believe that the action was not their preferred one, but it was okay. That's the difference between a king and a tyrant. The king cares about the subjects and how they feel, and they try to do right by them. And the tyrant does not. And you can tell in the moment, it's very difficult to tell if you are the victim of a tyrant or a king, because in that moment, you're not getting what you want, so you're the worst judge in the room. However, at the end of the day, when things are done and there's no more uncertainty, if the problem has been solved and everybody is still all right, then you were dealing with a wise king who was very good to put you down when he did. And if things went from bad to worse, just like you knew they would, but you couldn't stop them, then you were dealing with a tyrant and you submitted, and it was worse for everyone because you didn't stand up to it. And that's the flip side of it, because that's the only way to deal with a tyrant, is you have to stand up to it. You don't make peace with the tyrant. By definition, they would be something else if you made peace with them. They would be an ally. A tyrant is one who imposes, which means their weakness is something that can oppose. Which means if you're a tyrant to yourself, you got to learn how to stand up to yourself before you're going to be able to stand for anything. And the way to know if you're a tyrant to yourself is to ask, do I do things that I don't want to do and they don't feel like my choice? The answer to that question is yes, you're a tyrant. Are there certain things you can't talk about because there's a punishment for mentioning them? You're a tyrant. Are there certain words that make you so angry that you would throw your mother out of the conversation? You're a tyrant. Does being criticized make you angry? You're a tyrant. You get the idea. And it's not just to others. It's to you as well. That's everything that I felt in that one sentence of learning how to see the innocent around you, who you trust, suffer because you're a tyrant. Their trust is abused. And trusting the trust that others give me is something that I consider to be a core quality. That's an axiomatic quality. Your word is your bond is a true thing. Your word has the power you give it, and the power you give it is how often you change it. And the more that your word makes things turn out well for you, combined with the frequency that your word needs to change, is your wisdom score. And people do not ignore it when your life is going well and you always have the same message, which is consistent with itself. There's power in that. The next one, learning how to see that some of your own weakness makes it fortunate you have a tyrant to stop you from getting the power to act on them. So that was me poking fun at the definition of the word tyrant, as I've said before, meaning I'm the one who's out of line, and I feel that this right discipline, which if it were not enacted would make things worse for myself and everyone around me, was not taken, I would be the cause of more suffering, and I would feel like I was not the cause. So that means you have to realize that criticism is not always bad. That's what I was going through. If criticism is always bad because I am not to be criticized, who gives you the right? Then it's a damn good thing I have people who can stop me because they need to, because I'm not thinking with my head on straight. So it's fortunate. It doesn't mean it's likely or that it's guaranteed. You are fortunate. You're lucky if you have people that stop you from being a tyrant, because it hurts to stop people from being tyrants. Which is why the people who are tyrants to themselves don't do anything about it, because it hurts. And if someone that you love is strong enough to hurt you because it's the right thing to do, and you make them suffer the pain of your ignorant perspective of betrayal, you make their job twice as hard and not a thankful one at all. Let's see. 10th breaking. Remember to use people who will love you no matter what when you act out ideas in your head. If they would turn against you, they are really preventing you from turning on yourself. Trust the criticism of people love you. Learn the value of being scolded. That's the deeper explanation of what I just said previously. Sometimes I do that when a point is important. I'll write the condensed version, and then a few moments later, I'll write an expanded version of it, which means the same thing. So that's putting a dimensional quality next to it. It would be a lower dimensional quality, the one before it, and then a higher dimensional expansion. Both are consistent. So that's a compression algorithm in steps, meaning if you want to be able to send a message like this back across your survival circuits, it needs to be as compressed as the first one. But because it was a little hard to understand by the words alone, the higher dimensional explanation was put immediately after so that they become simpatico. That's a Rosetta Stone. Specifically a Rosetta Stone for dimension. What time have I got? I got time for one or two more. The 11th breaking. Learn the value of taking a hit. Learn the value of taking a hit and not giving one back. So that sounds like someone who's a glutton for punishment, but I was already a glutton for punishment. So that's not what I was thinking when I wrote this. This was a moment of growth for me, as most of these are. If somebody's shadow upsets them, and you share part of that shadow with them, if you can control your reaction and show nothing every time they lash out, it is like standing there taking punches without defending yourself and showing that the only reason you don't defend yourself is because you're powerless with your attack. It is the ultimate big dick energy to take somebody's abuse and act like it's not going on, because it hurts them to use it that way. And you are literally showing them what a crybaby they are because you're taking it and they're not. So that's what I meant. Learn the value of taking a hit. Yes, that's how you know when it's happening. Learn everything that means. Learn what it means to get out of the way. Learn what it means to stop. Learn what it means to hit back. But also this forgotten thing. So that's the yes is the first part. Learn the value of taking a hit. Yes. This is the and that I was tacking on to my current thought process. Learn the value of taking a hit and not giving one back. That was a strategy, field of strategy I had not fully developed. And I said, if I paid more attention to this, I would have more options. Next one. Learn to embrace the fury of loud noises. I wrote that on somebody's behalf, and that was a thing I figured out a long time ago, and he was making me feel nostalgic for that. I was high anxiety, and I couldn't yell, and I didn't like power tools or all that stuff. So learning how to shout in a way that I could ramp myself up to and practice and become really good at was the way to wake up my anger in a positive sense, which is the part of anger that is used justifiably and is used at a low level to build and maintain confidence. It's that slow boil that lets you know that you're lukewarm right now by choice, but you're not cold ever. Bottled energy, waiting, held back only by restraint. You are not helpless. You are currently harmless by choice. You are not helpless. Last one. Learn to set your inner clock to everyone else's time. Learning the value of letting things go without needing a memory for them to live on at all. Learn the value of what doesn't matter. So this was a relevance algorithm that I had written. If I do these 3 things, I'll always know what's relevant. Learn to set my inner clock to everyone else's time. What am I interacting with? Is it fast like me? Is it mid-range? Is it really, really slow? That doesn't mean it's true or false. It just means the speed at which the information is moving. It's different for everybody. So that's number 1. How fast is the information traveling? So I can match that speed. So that means any transfers will happen on a relativistically motionless plane because we're shared motion. Makes it easy for the exchange to happen because we're next to each other instead of passing each other in the night. Learning the value of letting things go without need for a memory of them to live on at all. That means there are certain things that are processes to a goal. And once the goal is understood, the goal can be used to represent the entire process. And it doesn't need to be unpacked and regurgitated every time. That means you are allowed to let things go if you've explored them before, even if they're not things that you agree with. And then finally, learn the value of what doesn't matter, which is a reference to everything that doesn't matter is things that are not your current goal. So that's a reminder to learn what your goal is and learn to look for everything that is not your goal. That's the test. Is it my goal or is it not? So if I match the speed of whatever I'm encountering, if I learn to let go my preconceived notions and I learn to let go of learn the value of what doesn't matter, meaning learn the value of everything that is not my goal, then I have a very good chance of being very accurate in that moment without it being biased or swayed in a bad direction that makes it so I can't see straight. So that it's a mental navigation calibration test. It's returning your origin to 0, 0, 0. All right, that's what I got for today. I kind of like this. I want to do another one if you don't mind.
Sure.
I think part of me is also fighting the end of this series, which is approaching. So maybe I'm trying to squeeze in a few extra. Yeah, we're getting close to the end.
Yeah, but the end is a starting point for another whatever brings anxiety to the end of this one.
So I need, the next process will be the editing, which maybe could be a group activity as well. That might be fun. Usually editing is a solo thing, but if there's debate on content presentation, maybe a group approach would be smarter. I could be a flexible enough real-time video editor that we could do that. I've got the skill set.
We could try for that. I also need to edit the Sunday videos every week.
Yeah.
You could always work on 2 projects at the same time.
That sounds, or just be like adjacent editing buddies, which would keep us both on task.
It should.
I have accountability in groups larger than 1. So if I'm in the room, it's not a sure thing, but if there's more than 1 person, but I'm fixing that. That's the thing. That's the thing I've been getting better at. Keeping my own word to myself instead of figuring out ways to get around the promises and their negative consequences. I'm a master of avoiding consequence, but I'd rather do it the right way and not have to keep avoiding it at all.
Yeah, I'm on the same page.
All right, Tony, if there's no other further questions or comments, I will peace out.
Yep. I'll see you Thursday.
Would miss it.